Look up for a moment and imagine the invisible highways above your head, where thousands of machines race silently through darkness, each one moving faster than a bullet while carrying the future of human connection. Space is no longer empty, and that reality forces a question that defines our era. Can humanity expand without creating chaos? The story of Starlink begins with that tension, not as a tale of hardware alone, but as a reflection of ambition disciplined by responsibility. Long before internet signals reached remote villages or ships at sea, engineers were confronting a quieter enemy: space junk, fragments of forgotten missions that turn orbit into a minefield. Every bolt, shard, and abandoned satellite becomes a reminder that progress without foresight is fragile. This is where inspiration meets philosophy, because building something bold requires thinking beyond launch day and toward consequences measured in decades. The vision associated with Elon Musk is often described as fearless. Yet at its core, it is deeply pragmatic, asking how tomorrow survives the momentum of today. Starlink satellites are not passive objects drifting blindly through orbit. They are aware, adaptive systems designed to think ahead, constantly calculating their position in relation to everything else circling Earth. Autonomous collision avoidance is not a luxury feature, but a moral choice embedded in code. Each satellite uses onboard sensors, orbital data, and predictive models to foresee potential threats hours or days before danger appears. When a risk is identified, the satellite adjusts its path with subtle precision, changing altitude or trajectory just enough to stay safe while conserving energy. No applause follows these maneuvers, yet they represent thousands of quiet decisions that protect the orbital environment for everyone. This is technology behaving like stewardship, proving that intelligence is measured not only by speed or power, but by restraint. Behind these decisions is a real-time tracking system that never sleeps. SpaceX monitors countless objects, from active spacecraft to debris smaller than a baseball, creating a constantly updated map of motion and probability. Algorithms compare paths, velocities, and future positions, turning raw data into foresight. What makes this remarkable is not only the scale, but the humility of the approach. The system assumes uncertainty, plans for error, and leaves room for adjustment. That mindset mirrors a broader lesson about progress itself, that resilience matters more than perfection. Sustainability in space begins with accepting that mistakes exist and designing systems smart enough to avoid repeating them. As Starlink expands, the stakes rise. Thousands become tens of thousands, and the margin for error narrows. This is where suspense quietly enters the narrative, because every additional satellite increases both potential benefit and potential risk. The easy path would be to launch and hope for the best, but hope is not a strategy. Instead, Starlink treats sustainability as a core design principle, integrating end-of-life plans that guide satellites safely back into the atmosphere where they burn up rather than linger as debris. Even failure is accounted for, transformed from catastrophe into controlled conclusion. That philosophy reframes success, suggesting that a project is not complete when it starts working, but when it stops working responsibly. There is a deeper motivation beneath the technology, a belief that exploration must not poison the frontier it seeks to understand. Space is a shared environment, not owned by any one nation or company, and actions taken today echo far beyond quarterly reports. By embedding collision avoidance and responsible deorbiting into Starlink, SpaceX signals that innovation and ethics do not have to compete. They can reinforce each other, creating systems that scale without collapsing under their own weight. This approach challenges creators everywhere to rethink what success looks like in crowded systems, whether in orbit, cities, or digital spaces. When people talk about inspiration, they often focus on dramatic launches and bold statements, but the quieter work tells the truer story. Inspiration lives in anticipation, in choosing to prevent problems rather than react to disasters. The Starlink network shows that motivation can be engineered, translated into code that acts even when humans are not watching. It reflects a future where intelligence is proactive, where ambition is paired with care. Looking upward again, those invisible highways begin to feel less like chaos and more like choreography. a sign that humanity can move fast without breaking what it touches. This balance between speed and care defines the next chapter of exploration, where systems must act responsibly, even as ambitions grow larger. Starlink becomes more than infrastructure. It becomes a test of whether humans can learn from past mistakes and design futures that endure. The motivation behind this effort is not fame or spectacle, but continuity, the quiet confidence that progress should leave room for others to follow. Every avoided collision is an unseen victory, proof that prevention is as heroic as recovery when the stage is as unforgiving as space. These choices invite viewers to reconsider sustainability, not as limitation, but as freedom. The freedom to keep building without erasing opportunity for the future. In that sense, Starlink reflects a broader human aspiration to rise responsibly, to think ahead, and to prove that intelligence is measured by care as much as capability. As this story unfolds, it reminds us that the most powerful revolutions are the ones guided by foresight, patience, and respect for the environments we depend on to survive. That lesson begins above but lives here. There is a moment in every ambitious system where complexity begins to push back, where success itself creates pressure, and this is where the real test of vision begins. As Starlink's constellation grows, the challenge is no longer simply placing satellites into orbit, but orchestrating them in a crowded, constantly shifting environment where a single miscalculation can ripple outward. Space is unforgiving, and unlike problems on Earth, there is no pause button, no easy repair, no second chance once objects collide at orbital speeds. This is where the suspense quietly deepens, because the margin between harmony and disaster narrows with every launch. Each satellite becomes both a tool and a responsibility, carrying not only data signals, but the weight of shared space. The real-time orbital tracking process that supports Starlink functions like a living nervous system, absorbing information from global sensors, telescopes, and tracking networks. Data flows continuously, describing positions, speeds, and trajectories of everything that moves above the planet. This information is not static. It evolves second by second, forcing the system to constantly reassess what it thinks it knows. Predictions are made, probabilities calculated, and risk thresholds evaluated, not once, but endlessly. The philosophy behind this approach is subtle but powerful, acknowledging that certainty is an illusion and adaptability is strength. This mindset echoes the broader engineering culture often associated with Elon Musk, where first principles thinking meets relentless iteration, and where systems are designed to learn rather than simply obey. Autonomous collision avoidance transforms satellites from passive hardware into decision-making entities. They are programmed to interpret warnings, assess severity, and act without waiting for human approval when time is critical. This autonomy is not about removing humans from the loop, but about respecting the reality that signals from Earth take time, while collisions happen in seconds. The suspense lies in this autonomy, because every automated decision carries consequences. A maneuver that avoids one threat could create another if misjudged. This is why layers of safeguards exist, from conservative thresholds to coordinated planning that ensures satellites do not act in isolation, but as part of a collective system. It is choreography at orbital speed, where trust in algorithms replaces instinct, and discipline replaces improvisation. As viewers absorb this, a deeper realization emerges. Sustainability is not a static goal, but a continuous process. It demands vigilance, humility, and acceptance that growth multiplies responsibility. SpaceX's approach treats sustainability not as a marketing term, but as an engineering constraint, something that shapes design choices from propulsion systems to software architecture. Satellites are built with ion thrusters that allow precise, efficient adjustments, reducing fuel waste while enabling fine control. Their orbits are chosen to naturally decay over time, ensuring that even in worst-case scenarios, they do not linger indefinitely. These choices reflect a long-horizon perspective, one that values the future health of orbit as much as present utility. Yet the tension remains, because no system is perfect. The growing density of objects increases uncertainty, and every year adds more participants to Earth's orbital ecosystem. Governments, companies, and researchers all share the same sky, whether coordinated or not. In this environment, Starlink's practices set expectations, implicitly challenging others to adopt similar standards. The suspense here is collective, asking whether humanity can align around shared rules before accidents force them upon us. Technology alone cannot solve this, but it can lead by example, showing that proactive responsibility is possible at scale. The inspirational dimension of this story emerges not from triumph, but from restraint, from choosing to slow down just enough to prevent irreversible damage. Viewers are invited to reflect on how this lesson applies beyond space, to any system that grows rapidly without a clear plan for coexistence. The invisible drama unfolding above Earth mirrors challenges on the ground, where connectivity, growth, and sustainability often collide. By embedding ethical foresight into Starlink's design, SpaceX demonstrates that motivation can be operationalized, turned into processes that act consistently, even when attention fades. This is not about perfection, but about commitment, about showing up every day with systems that care, even when no one is watching. The suspense deepens as we consider what happens if this commitment fails, if shortcuts replace discipline, or if ambition outpaces responsibility. The consequences would not be immediate applause or criticism, but silent collisions, cascading debris, and lost opportunity for generations. That possibility sharpens the significance of every avoided collision, every calculated maneuver, every design decision made with tomorrow in mind. In this light, Starlink becomes a proving ground for a philosophy of progress, one that insists that innovation must coexist with stewardship. It asks whether humanity can build networks that connect without destroying the spaces they occupy. The answer is still being written, maneuver by maneuver, orbit by orbit, in a constant negotiation between ambition and care. As suspense lingers, viewers are left with a sense that the future depends not on single breakthroughs, but on sustained attention to detail, on systems that quietly do the right thing at scale. This is where motivation turns practical, where inspiration becomes infrastructure, and where the challenge of sustainability reveals itself not as a barrier, but as the very path forward. As this story reaches its highest orbit, the meaning becomes clearer, because what is happening above Earth is not just a technical solution, but a mirror held up to human ambition itself. Starlink's approach to avoiding space junk and collisions represents a quiet promise that growth does not have to be reckless, that expansion does not have to come at the cost of destruction. In a world that often celebrates speed over wisdom, these satellites move fast while thinking ahead, and that balance is where true inspiration lives. Sustainability here is not an afterthought added to calm critics, but a foundational belief that the future must remain usable, not only for those who arrive first, but for everyone who follows. This belief reshapes how progress is measured, shifting focus from how quickly something can be built to how responsibly it can endure. The real-time orbital tracking systems, the autonomous decision-making, and the carefully planned end-of-life deorbiting all point toward a philosophy that treats space as a shared responsibility, rather than an empty resource to be consumed. This way of thinking challenges viewers to reconsider the narratives they accept about innovation, power, and success. The inspiration often associated with Elon Musk is not simply about bold ideas, but about confronting hard constraints head-on and refusing to ignore inconvenient realities. Space debris is inconvenient, invisible to most people, and easy to dismiss until it causes irreversible damage. By addressing it proactively, Starlink demonstrates that leadership is defined not by what is avoided publicly, but by what is prevented quietly. The suspense that once hovered over the risk of collisions transforms into something else, a question of whether this mindset can spread, whether responsibility can scale alongside technology. Each avoided collision becomes a data point, a small confirmation that foresight works, that preparation beats reaction. Over time, these small confirmations accumulate into trust, not only in a system, but in the idea that humanity can learn from its past mistakes. The lesson is subtle, yet powerful. Progress is not a straight line upward, but a careful path that requires constant correction. Starlink satellites adjust their orbits the way thoughtful people adjust their goals, not abandoning direction, but refining it in response to new information. This adaptability is what keeps systems alive in complex environments, whether those systems are networks in space or societies on Earth. The motivation here is not fueled by spectacle, but by persistence, by the willingness to do the same careful work again and again without recognition. Viewers are invited to see sustainability not as limitation, but as a form of confidence that the future matters enough to protect. As the constellation continues to grow, it becomes a living experiment in coexistence, proving that thousands of independent units can act in coordination toward a shared outcome. This challenges the assumption that scale inevitably leads to chaos. Instead, it suggests that chaos emerges when coordination is neglected, when responsibility is treated as optional. The quiet discipline of Starlink's design argues the opposite. That discipline enables freedom, and structure allows exploration to continue. The broader implication reaches beyond space technology, touching any field where growth threatens to overwhelm its environment. Whether in digital networks, cities, or economies, the same principle applies. Sustainability must be designed, not hoped for. By embedding this principle into hardware and software, SpaceX demonstrates that values can be operational, translated into actions that occur even when no one is watching. This is where inspiration becomes tangible, where philosophy becomes process. The satellites circling Earth do not debate ethics or sustainability, yet they embody those choices through their behavior. That embodiment is what makes the story compelling, because it shows that ideals are strongest when they are built into systems, not just spoken aloud. As viewers reflect on this, the earlier suspense resolves into clarity. The future of space is not decided by a single launch or innovation, but by countless small decisions made consistently over time. Every maneuver that avoids debris, every calculation that prioritizes long-term safety, reinforces the idea that progress can be responsible without losing momentum. This realization invites a deeper form of motivation, one rooted in patience and foresight rather than urgency alone. It suggests that the most meaningful achievements are those that leave room for others to achieve after us. Looking upward again, the once crowded sky begins to feel purposeful, not chaotic, a reminder that intelligence expresses itself through care. The story of Starlink, avoiding space junk and collisions, becomes a symbol of what is possible when ambition respects boundaries and designs around them. It is a reminder that humanity's reach will continue to extend outward, but its wisdom must grow just as far. This balance between daring and discipline defines the next era of exploration, where success is measured not only by how far we go, but by how well we preserve the paths we travel. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.